Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze Arteta's tactics and Arsenal's 1-1 draw with Burnley. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal in a 4-2-3-1 and Burnley in a 4-4-2. So first we're going to focus on how Burnley looked to disrupt Arsenal and then see how the Gunners were able to create quality chances. So like I said, you have Burnley dropping off into two banks of four, and initially it looked like Thomas and Xhaka would be boxed into that midfield zone with Vidra and Wood just ahead of David Luiz and Marty, and Brownhill and Westwood holding their position and not initially stepping into the path of the Arsenal double pivot. Similar to previous games, you would see Xhaka dropping into the left of Marty to make a 3v2 advantage, and that would allow Kieran Tierney to push forward. How Burnley would look to cope with that threat is that they'd have Vidra and Wood close down the center backs. At times they would have Wood shooting out to close down Xhaka, but if they wanted to go 3v3 in that zone, you would see Goodmanson pushing forward to close down Xhaka, and when Willian would drop off deeper in search of the ball, Westwood or Brownhill would drop off to close him down, and Loughton would close down Tierney. Ultimately, it was the 3v3 press that led to the goal that Burnley did score, but for the most part, Arsenal didn't encounter any issues with Burnley pressing higher up the pitch. When you focus on Arsenal's overall attacking shape, if Xhaka did drop off towards that inside left position, you'd have Tierney bombing forward to peg back Loughton, and what you'd see in that midfield zone was Thomas Partey would sit in between Vidra and Wood. Odegaard would drop off into the gap between McNeil and Brownhill. Willian would drop into the gap between Goodmanson and Westwood. And then you have Saka holding the width against Taylor. Aubameyang occupying the center backs, but at times he could drop into that Brownhill-Westwood gap. And if Saka wanted to drift in a bit narrow, there were times where it looked like he was occupying Taylor and me, and that would allow Chambers to push forward due to McNeil's narrow positioning. But in terms of Arsenal's overall build-up play, out in the wider areas, Burnley were comfortable with their threat. When you look at Arsenal's right-hand side, Saka was often in 1v2 situations because they weren't worried of the threat of Chambers, and by the time they switched the ball out to him, McNeil was able to drop off, and if Taylor did have to shift out to close down Chambers, then Mee was able to step in to close down Saka. Whereas overall on the left-hand side, when Willian was dropping off into those gaps of space to receive the ball, he would shift it out to Tierney, but by then Goodmanson had dropped off deeper to prevent the left back from delivering quality crosses into the box. Here you can see an example of Arsenal's build-up play with Thomas Partey ahead of the Burnley front two, Xhaka shifted to an inside left position with Goodmanson prepared to step out and apply pressure if he receives the ball. You have Aubameyang dropping into the center circle between the Burnley midfield duo, and what's interesting here is that Odegaard is in search of the ball just beyond the halfway line, but Mee is ready to step forward if he does receive possession. So when you break down how Arsenal were able to create quality chances, there were two methods that were successful in that opening half. One was Aubameyang's movement in behind the Burnley high line, and the second one involved Burnley's overall attacking shape going wrong. Because when Burnley looked to push forward, what we often saw was that McNeil was dropping off deeper in space ahead of Saka, and that would allow Taylor to bomb forward beyond Chambers higher up the pitch. But when Arsenal were able to win possession, what you ended up seeing there was a gap in behind Taylor and McNeil for Saka to break into, and that often led to great quality counterattacks between Saka and Aubameyang. Here you could see Xhaka picking up the ball ahead of the Burnley front two, with Aubameyang making a run between the center backs to exploit their high line, and Aubameyang brings down Xhaka's long ball over the top beyond the Burnley center backs with his first touch, but Mee does well to track Aubameyang's run into the Burnley penalty area to make a vital block. Shortly after that, it's Aubameyang pulling the ball back to Thomas in acres of space ahead of the Burnley midfield bank, and you could see the Arsenal striker beginning to make a run across Loughton. Loughton does well to track Aubameyang's run, and he gets a foot on the ball to prevent a first-time effort on goal. However, the right back chests the ball down and tamely guides it into the path of Aubameyang in the 6-yard box, but the Arsenal striker scuffs his effort wide of the net from this position. And then here, following Odegaard laying the ball off to Xhaka, you have Aubameyang drifting into space behind Loughton and Goodmanson down the left channel. As you can see, Xhaka clips a long ball over the top, placing Aubameyang beyond Tarkowski, which results in Pope rushing out of his penalty penalty area, but Pope ultimately wins the battle with the Arsenal striker as he clears danger to prevent the 1v1 break. Meanwhile, on the opposite flank, here you can see me nodding David Luiz's clearance into the path of Chambers, who is ahead of Westwood and McNeil. Chambers carries the ball beyond McNeil and Westwood ahead of Taylor before squaring the ball to Saka, positioned ahead of me, and that's when Saka turns and slides the ball across the Burnley center back for Aubameyang at the edge of the box, with Tarkowski a few yards away from applying pressure. Opposed to controlling the ball to turn and have an attempt on goal, Aubameyang instantly slides it into right half space for Saka's run beyond me, and Saka does well to take Aubameyang's pass beyond the Burnley center backs and Taylor, but from this position fails to double Arsenal's lead. Later on in that game, following a loose pass from Brownhill that Tierney intercepts, we could see Odegaard set to break forward with Aubameyang and Saka running beyond an advanced Taylor towards his right. Odegaard's pass falls to Saka, which sets a 2v2 break with the Burnley center backs as Westwood and Taylor attempt to recover, and as Saka carries the ball towards the box and drags 4 players towards the ball, we witness Odegaard beginning to make an overlapping run into the Burnley penalty area. Saka's reverse ball into right half space should have placed Odegaard in a position to deliver a low ball through the box or force Pope into a save, but his pass is overhit towards the byline and leaves Odegaard in this position, saving the ball with Taylor applying pressure. Odegaard makes the most of a bad situation by pulling the ball back between Westwood and me for Thomas Partey at the edge of the box, but he skied his first time effort over the net, and that all stems from an Arsenal break with Taylor and McNeil caught higher up the pitch. And if we look to one final example, it's Odegaard nodding Marty's clearance beyond Westwood for Aubameyang to break beyond the Burnley midfield duo, while Saka is joining the counter with McNeil and Taylor caught in Arsenal's third. Aubameyang carries the ball towards the Burnley center backs with Saka making a run towards right half space, while Brownhill attempts to recover. From this position, you're expecting Saka to carry Aubameyang's pass towards goal to double Arsenal's lead. However, Saka fails to guide Aubameyang's pass towards goal, and it rolls across his body towards his right to halt the attack. However, when we focus on why Arsenal struggled in the second half, Burnley did initiate a higher press to start that half, with the front two closing down the center backs, McNeil and Goodmanson closing down the fullbacks, and you would see Brownhill and Westwood closing down Thomas and Xhaka. As that half continued, what you ended up seeing was that if Xhaka looked to shift out to the left-hand side, you would see more of Vidra shifting across to apply pressure, and Thomas Partey would encounter the same issues. And along with McNeil and Goodmanson doing a better job of dropping off deeper to protect the fullbacks, what we ended up seeing was that there was less attention to Xhaka and Thomas Partey in those deeper positions, as Brownhill and Westwood shifted across to apply pressure to Odegaard and Willian looking to receive the ball in pockets of space. Here you could see Wood closing down David Luiz on the ball, with Brownhill shifting across to apply pressure on Pepe, opposed to sitting near Thomas Partey with Lacazette calling for the ball between the lines. But Westwood does well to shift across to cut off David Luiz's pass to Lacazette in that zone. With Xhaka splitting the center backs, we see Goodmanson stepping towards Marty on the ball, but Westwood shifts across to Willian, unworried if Thomas Partey receives possession, while Loughton pushes to Tierney, and Tarkowski is tight on Aubameyang. Shortly after that, you have Xhaka from that inside left position sliding the ball across a stepping Westwood for Willian, but Tarkowski steps in to win the ball as Goodmanson is dropped deeper ahead of Tierney, and Loughton shifted across to close down Aubameyang. And then even here, as Burnley drop off deeper, they have 3v2 down the right, with Westwood shifting towards Willian and Goodmanson dropping deep in a narrow right side position for cover, as Loughton is ahead of Tierney. Arteta's solution to Arsenal's attacking woes in that second half was the introduction of Lacazette and Pepe, and while Arsenal did lose a natural link in that midfield zone, Lacazette's arrival was significant because it helped Arsenal occupy the two Burnley center backs. That meant that Saka now shifted over to the left-hand side, and what we often saw was that whether it be Aubameyang or Lacazette, one of them would be occupying the two center backs, and then you would see Aubameyang shifting towards Loughton to occupy the right back, which enabled Saka to receive the ball in pockets of space ahead of the Burnley backline, and he was able to create combination play down that left side of the pitch, which resulted in Pepe getting to quality positions in the Burnley box. Here you can see Ceballos sliding the ball across Westwood for Saka dropping into a pocket of space between Westwood and Brady, with Aubameyang occupying Loughton and Tierney looking to push forward on the overlap. Saka carries the ball towards the Burnley backline, and he ends up sliding sliding the ball across Brady and Loughton for the Arsenal left back, who's breaking forward down the left channel. Tierney ends up sliding the ball across Loughton and Tarkowski for an unmarked Pepe, breaking into the box beyond McNeil, as Lacazette's run drags me and Peters towards the 6-yard box, but Pepe fails to connect with his left back's delivery. And then shortly after that, it's David Luiz stepping into Burnley's third and locating Saka dropping into a pocket of space to the right of Westwood, as Brady is pegged back deeper due to Tierney's position, and Aubameyang once again is occupying Loughton. Saka shifts the play to Tierney to drag Brady and Loughton near the touchline before combining with Lacazette dropping ahead of Westwood to bypass the Burnley right back. Lacazette's pass places Saka in this position in left half space, where the center backs are dropping towards goal to block off the passing lane into Aubameyang running goal side of Peters at the front post, and Brownhill is tracking Xhaka, and once again Pepe is breaking freely into the penalty area beyond McNeil. That ultimately results to this opportunity that Pepe should have converted, as McNeil fails to track his run. And in the final seconds of the game, we witness 3v3 action on the left, with Pepe sliding the ball to Saka ahead of Westwood shifting across for cover. And when Saka receives the ball, he turns and slides it across Loughton for Pepe's run into the Loughton-Brady gap to break in left half space. Saka's pass places Pepe in this position, and it ultimately results in several half chances followed by Ceballos hitting the post. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.